Hello and welcome to this short training video offered through the Center for Teaching Excellence. This video will explain the differences between course versus program learning outcomes and will be accomplished through the use of analogies and practical examples. This video is being created to help faculty and serve as a resource for faculty as they write their program learning outcomes and course learning outcomes. Let's go ahead and get started. First, let's have a discussion about what are learning outcomes. Learning outcomes are specific, measurable statements of what graduating/exiting students should know, be able to do, believe, or value after completing the program. Learning outcomes should focus on observable behaviors whenever possible. Learning outcomes should be focused on the results of student learning, not on the learning process or on teaching. Learning outcomes should be derived from the program's mission statement. If your program does not have a mission statement, it might be advisable, actually it is advisable, to create one, as this mission statement will help drive the program learning outcomes, and the program learning outcomes will help drive the course learning outcomes. Program learning outcomes are big picture. I know this is a corny example, but in this picture of a salad below, think of the salad as being representative of your program. The program outcomes are broad and general. Program learning outcomes, or PLOs, assess students' cumulative learning across courses at the end of the program. Each ingredient of this salad would represent an individual course in your program, and of course the salad representing the bigger picture, which is the program. Course learning outcomes, on the other hand, represent the ingredients that are in the salad. So if we look at these tomatoes and carrots, etc., each ingredient would represent an individual course in your program. And each ingredient is part of the salad. Each course is part of your program. I know, it's a corny analogy, but I think one that is easy to grasp. Course learning outcomes are incremental knowledge and skills that students develop bit by bit throughout the program. Course learning outcomes are aligned with, but typically narrower than, program outcomes. Let's take a look at a sample academic program. You can see that this academic program begins with a mission: professional development for foreign language teachers. Program outcome number 1. Students summarize second language acquisition theory and research. This program outcome is broad and it's general, but the course outcome that's mapped to it is more specific, more narrow. Students critically evaluate research on second language acquisition. You could think of this course outcome as being representative of course outcome number 1 in Foreign Language 101, just a fictitious course. And then the course outcome is tied to the program outcome, and the program outcome is then mapped to the overall program mission. And we can see how that's exemplified in the other two course outcomes and how they're mapped to the more broad the more general outcome, program outcome, and hence back to the program mission. Again, course outcomes, each of these is more specific and more narrow in its focus, and they are mapped to program outcomes, which are then mapped to the program mission. Regardless of whether your program is a career and technical education program, a liberal arts program, in the sciences, if it's an academic program that has courses for academic credit and they are receiving an academic credential that are tied to the program, it's an academic program. Whether it's welding, nursing, psychology, biology. If it's a program and there's courses being offered for academic college credit, it's an academic program. Some tips as you're writing program learning outcomes. Choosing a manageable number of outcomes is key. Best practices recommend defining 4 to 6 outcomes for academic programs. Actually, this number is more like 3 to 5 learning outcomes for academic programs. Keeping them at a minimum amount, such as 3 to 5 or 4 to 6, is going to make assessing program learning outcomes a lot easier than if you have 15 to 20. 15 to 20 program learning outcomes is simply too many, and it is not consistent with best practices and it highly unadvisable. It's going to be a lot easier to engage in curriculum mapping, as we saw in the previous slide, with mapping course learning outcomes to program outcomes to the program mission by having fewer program learning outcomes. Course learning outcomes tend to have more in comparison to program learning outcomes. A final reminder, program learning outcomes are broad and general. Limit them 3 to 5. Course learning outcomes are more specific. They have a larger amount compared to program learning outcomes. And lastly, when writing learning outcomes, always use verbs from Bloom's taxonomy that will allow you to write program learning outcomes that are measurable, observable, and specific to the appropriate level of Bloom's taxonomy, as we can see here in the pyramid. If you would like further assistance in writing program learning outcomes or course learning outcomes, please feel free to contact the faculty and staff at the Center for Teaching Excellence, and we'll be more than willing to assist you. Feel free to give us a call, or you can send us an email at cte@kckcc.edu.